For decades, we have been pointing our best telescopes into deep space. We are waiting for answers from the boundless and bustling universe. But what we find there shatters our entire picture of reality. The data from the instruments reveals something so terrifying that scientists refuse to believe it. We looked at a specific sector of the sky and expected to see the light of thousands of galaxies. Instead, we discovered a completely lifeless, unnatural void there. It's not just the absence of stars or clouds of cosmic dust. It looks as if a huge chunk of the universe itself has been roughly cut out. And this dark anomaly defies any logical explanation. Astronomers have long developed equations to estimate the probability of other worlds existing. Calculations show a high probability of encountering advanced alien civilizations. Researchers were fully confident in the imminent success of years of space exploration. The equipment was supposed to intercept alien television transmissions or powerful navigation beacons. However, reality turned out to be far more terrifying than our darkest expectations. By all laws of physics, this region of space should be teeming with radiation. Ancient star systems that had existed for billions of years were located there. The planets orbiting such stars had had an enormous amount of time for life to develop. Intelligent beings should have left behind a massive radio signature, but now, absolute, unnaturally perfect silence reigns there. Our technology is becoming incredibly powerful with each passing year. Engineers are constantly creating ever more sensitive instruments to study the night sky. We are building giant radio telescopes capable of picking up the faintest whispers of distant quasars. These orbital observatories scan space with stunning optical resolution. We see the universe so clearly that we simply cannot be wrong. Based on all our experience, this region should be stable and predictable. Scientists have created highly complex algorithms to filter out natural cosmic noise. We easily distinguish the sounds of pulsars from artificial radio waves. The search system works perfectly, processing petabytes of complex information. All that was left for us to do was wait for first contact with our brothers in reason. But suddenly, all our mathematical models crashed against the harsh reality. Instead of the expected noise, the instruments recorded a complete absence of any data. This doesn't look like a typical dark cloud of gas or a dust cluster. The light from the galaxies behind this anomaly simply vanishes into thin air. It's as if a giant hole has formed in the fabric of reality at this spot. We used to attribute the lack of signals to the insufficient sensitivity of our antennas. It seemed that alien transmitters were too weak for our old Earth equipment. No one saw anything truly frightening in this silence. But now, this convenient and reassuring argument no longer holds water. We are staring straight into the void, and that void is terrifying enough to make us tremble. Reality seemed to us to be absolutely stable, understandable, and completely predictable. We firmly believed in the power of the human mind and the triumph of science. The scientific community had no doubt that space was full of friendly life. But we were incredibly mistaken in our naive expectations. Now we understand that there are things in the universe far more terrifying than loneliness. This gaping hole in space challenges our entire worldview. If our instruments aren't lying, then we don't understand the most basic laws. What lies hidden in this abyss could change the fate of all humanity. We thought we were on the verge of the greatest discovery in history, but instead, we have looked into the face of primal cosmic horror. But we see nothing there but dead, cold darkness. A truly gigantic chunk of space simply refuses to obey the known laws of physics. The great silence of the cosmos has become the most terrifying mystery of modern astronomy. The radio spectrum remains eerily silent. Optical telescopes reveal a perfect void in all directions. It is as if we are shouting into an absolutely empty infinitely vast and dark room. No echo or the slightest response comes from there. This terrifying silence shatters all our previous notions of the universe. Instruments show an unnatural void where massive star clusters should be. In the real universe, there are so-called voids or empty spaces. The most famous is the giant Bootes void, which has an enormous diameter. It stretches for hundreds of millions of light-years in all directions. But even at the center of such a void, solitary galaxies are occasionally found. Our anomaly, however, demonstrates a complete and absolute absence of anything. The most sensitive antennas on Earth detect only the strange disappearance of all signals. Any radiation seems to dissolve upon colliding with this invisible barrier. The data does not merely fail to align with our mathematically elegant theory, it completely and ruthlessly refutes it with every new attempt at observation. Something is definitely not going according to our human plan in this sector. Scientists are at a loss for explanations in the face of such an unprecedented phenomenon. The scientific world has always relied firmly on the laws of gravity and mass. According to these laws, matter should be distributed throughout the cosmos in the form of a thread-like web. Here, however, this cosmic web has been roughly torn apart by an unknown force. An invisible blade has literally severed the fundamental connections between star clusters. Instead of the expected light from ancient galaxies, we see only a static, lifeless background. This faint microwave hiss has lingered since the Big Bang. It is as if someone had simply cut out a piece of reality from the entire vast universe. A gaping hole has formed right where familiar, long-studied constellations used to be. We find not even the slightest hint of thermal radiation. There are no stars, no gas, not even ordinary cosmic dust. The section of the sky under observation looks like an absolute black hole in the cosmos. This place is completely devoid of any signs of familiar physical existence. We are looking at a region where there must surely be sources of immense energy. Astronomers select the oldest systems for detailed and deep listening. But space is completely silent across all radio frequencies available to us. Instruments detect only a perfect and terrifying interstellar vacuum. Such a total disappearance of matter simply defies human comprehension. It categorically contradicts all conceivable laws of thermodynamics and probability. Energy cannot simply vanish into thin air without a trace. Physicists cannot find a reasonable explanation for such a colossal loss of mass. The better our instruments become, the more terrifying this void appears. In the past, we could easily attribute this eerie darkness to the limitations of our telescopes. Scientists hoped that a new generation of technology would quickly resolve this vexing problem. But technological progress has only deepened our collective scientific confusion. We built gigantic arrays of antennas and sent powerful spacecraft into orbit. Now this old, reassuring argument no longer holds water for science. New orbital observatories have only confirmed our darkest fears. Optics have recorded a complete and unconditional absence of light in a vast sector. We see and hear everything with unprecedented clarity. Modern computers are capable of extracting a useful signal even from strong background noise. This unprecedented clarity only underscores the absolute unnaturalness of the void around us. We have obtained a picture of a perfect and geometrically precise erasure of space. At first, we genuinely thought this was just an unfortunate error in our ground-based equipment. Engineers spent months double-checking every minute detail of the radio telescopes and optical lenses. Kilometers of wiring and terabytes of complex code were analyzed. Every circuit board and every space sensor underwent thorough manual diagnostics. Specialists tested the programs hundreds of times under the most extreme conditions. They pointed the antennas at known Earth satellites to check the quality of the connection. It turned out that all the highly complex equipment was working perfectly, and without any glitches. Not a single damaged module was found in the communication systems. The instruments picked up test signals without the slightest distortion or loss of data packets. The problem clearly lay not in our machines, but in deep space itself. The equipment honestly showed what was actually in front of it. Humanity's eyes were fully functional, but the world before them had simply vanished. And that's when we began to notice something truly bizarre. This ominous darkness is nothing like the simple absence of bright stars. It looks unnaturally smooth, as if someone had carefully painted it onto the canvas of the sky. The edges of this abyss are frighteningly sharp and mathematically precise down to the millimeter. It's as if an invisible force has neatly erased all extraneous objects from the ether. Natural space always generates chaotic and random patches of light. Nature does not tolerate perfect geometry on such gigantic galactic scales. Natural dust nebulae always have jagged and blurred contours. Stars are born, explode, and pulsate, filling space with bright flashes. We should see this primordial chaos in all its beautiful diversity. Gas clouds should glow under the influence of powerful radiation from neighboring stars. Ionized gas always reveals the presence of hidden cosmic thermal processes. But instead, we come up against an absolutely smooth black wall of emptiness. The collected data looks as if any light is being deliberately absorbed or blocked. The darkness appears dense and almost tangible on the screens of modern monitors. It acts as a perfect shield against absolutely any electromagnetic waves. This is nothing like the simple absence of matter or advanced technology. Usually, dust clouds block the light of distant galaxies from us. But such dust can always be detected thanks to its infrared thermal radiation. Dark matter also gives itself away through distortions and gravitational lensing. Here, however, thermal cameras show a frighteningly low temperature, close to absolute zero. The sensor readings are as close as possible to the physical freezing limit of the universe. It more closely resembles the workings of a gigantic, incredibly powerful cloaking system. Some kind of impenetrable barrier has simply cut off this sector from the rest of the inhabited world. Someone or something is deliberately hiding a vast swath of reality from prying eyes. It appears to be a global erasure of all information from this sector. Not a single photon of light can penetrate this invisible wall. The entire electromagnetic spectrum in this zone simply ceases to exist for observers. Gravitational waves also mysteriously fade as they approach this zone. We cannot detect even the slightest curvature of space-time in that region. Astrophysicists have encountered a phenomenon that defies the fundamental principles of the universe's structure. All our unshakable laws of relativity shatter against this perfect black expanse. If we look at actual historical data, science has encountered similar mysteries before. At the beginning of the 21st century, the cold relic spot was discovered. This is a region of space with unusually low microwave radiation, which also sparked a great deal of controversy. This phenomenon generated a huge amount of heated scientific debate at the time. Many at the time speculated that our universe had collided with a parallel world. However, the current anomaly surpasses that spot in every possible way. It is not merely cold, it is completely dead in a physical sense. All Brownian motion of elementary particles has come to a complete halt within it. Some theorists are attempting to explain this through the unexplored properties of dark energy. In their view, dark energy can concentrate and create zones of absolute repulsion. In such places, space expands so rapidly that light cannot pass through it. This exotic force supposedly tears apart the very fabric of the vacuum we are accustomed to. But even these bold hypotheses cannot describe such a sharp boundary of emptiness. The transition from normal space to the dead zone occurs too suddenly. There is no gradual fading of light. it simply cuts off abruptly. Background radiation is cut off, as if it had hit an impenetrable concrete wall. And we realize with horror that our science is powerless to explain it. All existing mathematical models crumble upon encountering this fact. The academic community is in a state of quiet panic, trying to find even the slightest clue. Scientists sit in front of their screens for days on end, hoping to see the slightest change. Each new day of observation brings only more unanswered questions. We stand on the threshold of the greatest discovery or the most terrifying crisis in history. This black abyss stares back at us intently. We were completely unprepared to encounter such a massive cosmic anomaly. And here the situation is becoming significantly worse than our initial predictions. This is not just a single strange observation in one isolated sector of the sky. We are seeing this dark anomaly begin to behave completely unpredictably. Mysterious blind spots are appearing in new databases in perfect synchrony. Various independent telescopes on different continents are recording the same terrifying phenomenon. Errors are ruled out because the data is confirmed by numerous independent institutions. Astronomers around the world are receiving identical graphs of this spreading void. It is no longer possible to attribute what is happening to a local sensor malfunction. At first, researchers thought the phenomenon was static and permanently anchored to a single point. We tried to peer beyond the edges of this terrifying cosmic void. Astronomers pointed powerful instruments at neighboring star clusters along the perimeter. Everyone was waiting for at least some signs of stability at the boundaries of the affected zone. There was hope of finding a light bend there that would help calculate the mass of the invisible object. But the latest results turned out to be even more disappointing and terrifying. The surrounding stars simply began vanishing from our screens one by one. They disappeared in real time without any flashes or explosions. The dark zone doesn't just exist. It is beginning to devour the surrounding space. This ominous void is spreading beyond the limits of our initial understanding. The zone of destruction is expanding with frightening regularity every new week. Nothing is capable of stopping this geometrically precise expansion. It is slowly but surely engulfing millions of light-years of living intergalactic space. Scientists had hoped that this was simply a local observation defect or a temporary optical glitch. Instead, they discovered that the boundaries of the anomaly are steadily expanding every month. Space is literally dissolving right before our eyes. The problem turned out to be truly cosmic and of an extremely destructive scale. In an attempt to find an answer, we changed frequencies and scanning ranges hundreds of times. Researchers switched from familiar radio waves to X-ray and infrared spectra. The cameras were operating at the limits of their earthly technological capabilities. We persistently searched for powerful bursts of radiation at the edges of this engulfing darkness. After all, the destruction of matter should release a colossal amount of energy in the form of radiation. Physics predicts bright thermal flashes when massive stellar masses perish. But the edges of the anomaly remained unnaturally cold and completely silent. Astronomers tried to detect thermal emissions to understand the physical nature of the growing void. It seemed to us that light was simply being refracted under the influence of immense gravity. All researchers were looking for signs of severe warping of the familiar cosmic space. Optical telescopes monitored the behavior of the nearest galaxies around the clock. Perhaps we are dealing with a black hole of unimaginable size that distorts the background. But this strange barrier operates at absolutely every level of observation. Infrared sensors do not detect excess heat from the absorbed star systems. They simply vanish from our world without a single sound or flash. Optical telescopes record only how bright galaxies gradually dim and vanish. Bright spiral structures gradually dissolve into a thick, inky haze. no signal can penetrate this dense, expanding wall of darkness. We see only the process of the complete visual erasure of massive objects. All our technical ingenuity shatters against the insurmountable barrier of absolute black nothingness. With every new study, the scale of this threat only grows rapidly. The rate at which neighboring regions are being absorbed is increasing exponentially. If this continues, the outlines of the constellations we are familiar with will soon change. The planet's greatest minds have finally realized that this is not a random malfunction of complex equipment. It is a terrifying systemic error deeply embedded in the very fabric of the cosmos. The deeper we peer into the dark abyss, the more clearly we see this process. Our entire scientific framework is crumbling in the face of these facts. The anomaly effectively destroys all matter or hides it behind an impenetrable screen. We do not know if planets and stars remain intact within this darkness. Perhaps they continue to exist in complete isolation from the rest of the world. This thought offers a faint, yet almost unreal hope for their salvation. Scientists around the world are racking their brains over the physical nature of this baffling phenomenon. No modern theory is capable of logically explaining such a massive devouring of space. In search of a solution, astrophysicists have begun reanalyzing the dusty archives of past decades. They have turned en masse to historical data from observations of the night sky. Scientists dug up old photographic plates of the sky from the mid-20th century. Studying these old images revealed even more shocking historical facts. It turned out that the void began expanding long before the advent of modern digital telescopes. This destructive process was already active in the last century. It's just that back in those distant years, no one paid it the attention it deserved. We naively attributed the dark patches to technical errors or poor observatory equipment. Scientists blamed these black spots on imperfect terrestrial optics. Old methods of capturing light produced too many false artifacts. Photographic plates often had emulsion defects that were mistaken for voids in space. Astronomy was only taking its first steps in studying such colossal distances. Researchers considered the unevenness of starlight to be normal for imperfect terrestrial instruments. But now we realize with horror the magnitude of our fatal mistake. Retrospective analysis has revealed a clear pattern of expansion for this black spot. Comparing images from the 1970s with current data, we see a terrifying picture. The boundary of the void has advanced millions of parsecs toward us. The source of annihilation is steadily shifting toward Earth's orbits. This is definitely not a static phenomenon that can simply be ignored. We cannot turn our telescope away and forget about it forever. The problem is catching up with us, regardless of our desire to study it. It is approaching completely regardless of our unwillingness to believe it. Wherever this darkness creeps, it irrevocably erases stars from reality. The surrounding ether at the edges of the anomaly is so empty that it causes genuine panic. This completely contradicts the law of conservation of energy in our chaotic universe. The basic rules of physics completely break down at the edge of this dark spot. Matter cannot simply cease to exist without transitioning into another state. Yet our particle detectors remain silent, as if nothing is happening. No streams of neutrinos or cosmic rays emanate from the affected zone. The destruction of entire planets occurs without the slightest emission of accompanying radiation. Some experts compare this process to the quantum decay of a false vacuum. In physics, there is a theory that our universe is unstable and could transition into a new state. This theoretical doomsday scenario was long considered merely a frightening mathematical model. Now, however, these calculations have taken on a frighteningly real form. If such a transition begins, it will expand at the speed of light, destroying everything in its path. The laws of chemistry and physics inside the new bubble will be completely different. Life as we know it will be absolutely impossible there. And we are observing something frighteningly similar through our lenses. Just imagine the true scale of what could cause such an effect. To wipe out entire galaxies requires truly incredible and unimaginable power. It is a colossal amount of energy that far exceeds the combined output of all the stars in the Milky Way. The total power of our galaxy seems insignificant in the face of such a weapon. Not even the explosions of thousands of supernovae could generate such devastating power. We know of no natural processes of such terrifying magnitude. Our minds refuse to accept the very possibility of such a destructive machine existing. A machine of this scale defies any logical understanding of the world. The entire history of human astronomical observations knows of no precedent for such a catastrophe. We used to fear asteroids, comets, or destructive flares on unstable stars. For years, people built defense systems against rocks flying from the neighboring asteroid belt. Now these local threats seem utterly absurd and insignificant trifles. We have encountered something that irrevocably erases the very fabric of existence. This forces us to completely reevaluate our humble place in this indifferent universe. Our planet seems like a tiny speck of dust in the path of an invisible cosmic steamroller. All our scientific achievements are rendered meaningless in the face of such a colossal force. And the most terrifying thing is that there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. All we can do is watch in silence as darkness engulfs neighboring worlds. No earthly technology is capable of stopping or slowing down this colossal process. We find ourselves in the helpless role of spectators before the screen of the most terrifying cosmic finale. We have witnessed an event that forever changes the entire cosmic landscape. The map of the starry sky is turning into a blank black sheet with no chance of recovery. This destruction lies completely beyond the grasp of modern human science. And this is happening not only at the edges of a single specific cosmic void. Astronomers are constantly analyzing fresh data from the latest orbital observatories. Researchers are gathering vast amounts of information around the clock. The infrared cameras of modern telescopes yield equally alarming results every night. We are beginning to clearly see similar, frightening patterns in the most diverse corners of the sky. With every new scan of space, the situation becomes increasingly bleak and hopeless. Every image received only confirms the worst fears of the global scientific community. These rifts in reality are emerging independently of one another throughout the entire universe. The anomaly previously observed no longer appears to be a unique local failure of physics. It is rapidly taking on a frighteningly universal and all-encompassing character for the entire cosmos. No sector of observation can be considered completely safe anymore. Scientists are concluding that a fundamental process of decay exists. This ruthless law of destruction is taking effect everywhere, without the slightest exception. We are witnessing a veritable epidemic of vanishing stars and devoured giant nebulae. No natural barriers are capable of slowing this global decay of matter. The process proceeds with relentless mathematical precision in every possible direction. In recent years, we have thoroughly scanned thousands of distant galaxy clusters. Researchers have diligently searched for the slightest signs of stability in these raging stellar oceans. We have attempted to peer into the densest star clusters in the universe. The main goal was to find preserved life or surviving star systems there. There, the concentration of matter and gravitational bonds was supposed to halt any disintegration. But these dark voids gnaw gaping holes even in the centers of ancient galaxies. No density of matter can serve as a reliable shield against this void. Supermassive black holes vanish just as easily as tiny asteroids. For the sake of the experiment's purity, We even checked the gigantic voids between strands of dark matter. It is known that our universe resembles a colossal web of interstellar gas. It also contains a huge percentage of invisible dark matter. Astrophysicists had hoped that at least the initially empty regions would prove resistant to contamination. But everywhere, the same effect of light vanishing without a trace is invariably observed. In all of the vast, boundless cosmos, there is not a single safe haven from the darkness. Every new coordinate on the map of the starry sky becomes a risk zone. If this is indeed real, it changes absolutely everything in our understanding of the future. Modern science has always been fundamentally based on the law of conservation of energy and mass. Even during a supernova explosion, matter simply transitions to a different state of aggregation. The ejected elements form enormous clouds of superheated cosmic gas. This gas becomes the building material for new planets and future young stars. However, we are now observing a completely different and incredibly frightening physical phenomenon on a daily basis. Energy simply vanishes without a trace from a closed system for no apparent reason. We find absolutely no traces of thermal radiation following this disappearance. The basic laws of thermodynamics are crumbling right before our eyes on the screens of monitors at the largest observatories. This directly implies that the terrifying phenomenon we are observing is total systemic destruction. The scientific community is forced to urgently re-examine the most basic principles of the universe's structure. Old physical models can no longer adequately describe what is happening around us. We are faced with the painful task of accepting a new paradigm of reality, where the universe is completely unstable. It turns out that we live in a doomed world that is gradually erasing itself. Or perhaps outer space itself has been found to be subject to a deadly and unknown form of quantum decay. This degradation affects the very foundations of the fabric of space and time. Trust in fundamental science is beginning to plummet even among the most experienced researchers. Both of these hypotheses force us to seriously reflect on our true place in the world. The true scale of the cosmic anomaly simply defies adequate comprehension by the human mind. Our neurobiology is not adapted to perceiving destruction on such colossal galactic scales. This is definitely not a local invisible wall built by some aliens. The problem is of a far more fundamental, profound, and undoubtedly deadly nature. We are facing a phenomenon that pierces and destroys the very fabric of space and time. The very concept of metrics and distance completely loses its physical meaning. The physical vacuum is inexorably losing its stability at the speed of light. The speed of light is playing the most sinister and cruel joke on humanity here. What we see through powerful telescopes now happened millions of years ago. The light from galaxies that have vanished without a trace simply took a very long time to reach Earth's detectors. We are watching a live broadcast of events from deep historical antiquity. This directly implies that the actual boundary of the void lies much closer to us. The invisible front of destruction could already have easily covered half the distance to the Milky Way. We are deprived of the ability to obtain up-to-date information about the state of neighboring star systems. Our night sky shows us only an outdated picture of a long-dead world. It is a gigantic, all-consuming mold that has tightly entangled the entire boundless cosmos visible to us. It is distributed with surprising uniformity across all observable sectors of the night sky. This symmetry rules out chance and reveals the purposeful nature of the process of destruction. The ominous darkness devours every constellation and every gas nebula with equal ruthlessness. None of the galaxy's theoretically possible civilizations can escape this obliteration. The stars simply go out, one after another in an instant, leaving not even a faint afterglow. The absence of residual radiation breaks all the rules of particle physics known to us. The process proceeds in absolute silence and emits no dying radio signals into space. For many decades, we romantically believed that the universe would exist for trillions of years. Scientists sincerely believed in the possibility of a long and happy flourishing of intelligent organic life. By all calculations, the era of active star formation was supposed to continue for an incredibly long time. New stars would regularly ignite from dense clouds of hot interstellar hydrogen. We optimistically believed that space was stable and offered an infinite amount of time for exploration. Projects for the colonization of deep space were built exclusively on this positive conceptual foundation. People planned to build enormous ships for flights to neighboring star systems. But now, it suddenly turned out that the time of our entire universe is rapidly and inexorably running out. People seriously discussed the prospect of building gigantic spheres to harvest stellar energy. Scientists created detailed classifications of extraterrestrial civilizations based on their level of technological development. The Kardashev scale divided potential neighbors into planet conquerors and stellar engineers. We naively believed that a superior intelligence was capable of controlling entire galactic superclusters. Now, these once bold theories seem like children's fairy tales against the backdrop of the looming darkness. Any powerful super-civilization will prove utterly powerless against the fundamental quantum decay of matter. Even mastery over gravity will not save us from the disappearance of the very physical coordinates of space. Technology is meaningless when the very place for its application vanishes without a trace. Our beautiful, endless ocean of stars is being covered by gigantic dead spots of absolute nothingness. Light and dense matter are simply incapable of withstanding this merciless process of global annihilation. Galaxies are being destroyed so rapidly that we are clearly observing these changes in real time. The scale of the losses grows with each new week of round-the-clock astronomical observations. As a result, every developed star system faces inevitable, silent destruction. Fresh data from the latest ultra-powerful orbital telescopes only confirm our worst fears. The equipment faithfully transmits images to Earth of rapidly expanding black holes in the universe. Every week, astronomers, with horror, permanently remove dozens of previously known objects from the catalogs. If the destruction were proceeding in the usual natural way, we would have noticed anomalous radiation emissions. Powerful gamma-ray bursts would have illuminated half of Earth's sky. The demise of such an incredible number of massive stars is always accompanied by a colossal thermal explosion. However, instruments consistently record only absolute zero temperature and complete radio silence. The matter being destroyed does not shatter into incandescent fragments under the influence of monstrous gravity. It seems to be neatly and irrevocably erased from the very fundamental database of the universe. This terrifying circumstance is causing the world's leading astrophysicists to turn gray-right at their desks. Sound human logic categorically refuses to accept such mystical results of objective scientific observations. Our instruments detect no signs of a large-scale struggle by alien civilizations against the looming threat. We hear absolutely no panicked radio transmissions or desperate distress signals on standard frequencies. The airwaves remain unnaturally silent in the face of such a monumental threat to all life. No one is attempting to warn our backward cosmic neighbors of the approaching invisible end. Moreover, the detected void itself has a surprisingly precise, artificial mathematical structure. Physicists clearly see strict and incredibly frightening geometric patterns in these dark spots. This anomaly bears no resemblance to the jagged and chaotic contours of ordinary cosmic nebulae. The boundaries of the dead zones form mathematically perfect spheres without the slightest topological error. This ideal blockage of reality is too perfect to be a typical, spontaneous, natural, destructive phenomenon. Random processes in the wild always create unpredictable chaos, not a flawless, symmetrical void. Scorching gas clouds swirl bizarrely under the influence of stellar winds and gravity, and the most powerful explosions of ancient stars give birth to incredibly beautiful, yet utterly ragged, asymmetrical nebulae. Here, however, we witness the frighteningly precise work of a massive, invisible cosmic scalpel on a daily basis. With surgical precision, it carves out pieces of space with accuracy down to a fraction of a millimeter. Such incredible delicacy persists even on colossal scales, spanning thousands of light years. Such artificial regularity of geometric forms evokes a truly bone-chilling existential horror. And this forces us to move on to even more frightening and, frankly, shocking hypotheses. This accumulation of facts looks exactly as if someone incredibly powerful is removing chunks of the universe. The destruction proceeds according to a strict schedule, leaving no room for a saving coincidence. It all looks as if an unknown architect has decided to make radical changes to the old design. And only now, after many years of careful observation, have we begun to timidly grasp the scale of the purge. Someone is deliberately erasing entire inhabited worlds according to cruel laws that are completely beyond our control. We find ourselves utterly powerless in the face of this level of interference in the fabric of reality. Just imagine for a terrifying moment that every civilization lives in constant, primal fear. Various intelligent beings may develop calmly and peacefully on their home planets for millions of years. They may successfully build incredible technological megastructures in the vast, boundless cosmos. These species may even attempt to directly harness the colossal, inexhaustible energy of neighboring stars. Their advanced technologies can reach truly staggering, unimaginable heights within the local planetary system. But all their grand achievements are instantly and mercilessly destroyed by the touch of this perfect geometric void. Accumulated knowledge and culture are erased without the slightest hope for future digital or physical restoration. Evolution completely loses all logical meaning in the face of such systematic global formatting. For all their civilizational grandeur, they will never be able to withstand direct erasure from reality. All their most powerful warships and colossal laser weapons are inevitably swallowed up by this strange anomaly. They prove pitiful and utterly helpless in the face of this artificial cosmic eraser. The Supreme Mind simply cannot find a technical solution in time to repel such a fundamental threat. Conventional plasma weapons work exclusively against physical objects composed of basic, familiar atoms. It is utterly impossible to aim at absolute nothingness, which dissolves the very energy charges of defensive weapons. Any line of defense collapses before it even has a chance to fire its first shot. This is the extremely tragic, inevitable fate that awaits absolutely all intelligent species, without a single exception. Such a strict and merciless systematic purge brilliantly explains why we still do not see galactic empires. Naive Earthlings have been listening to the radio airwaves for decades as part of projects to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. We sincerely hoped to one day pick up random snippets of television broadcasts or navigation beacons from aliens. Scientists built enormous radio telescopes specifically to receive such hypothetical useful signals. Logically, the vast cosmos should have been buzzing with constant communications from highly advanced, powerful interstellar civilizations. Instead, our sensitive instruments heard only the oppressive silence of a lifeless and utterly cold ether. For a long time, this complete solitude seemed to us like an incredible mathematical statistical error. Now, the true reason for this great cosmic silence is becoming frighteningly and crystal clear to us. The world-famous Fermi paradox is finally receiving its darkest, yet entirely logical resolution. Any attempt at ambitious technological expansion by civilizations is thwarted not by internal destructive wars, but by the direct erasure of space itself. Life simply cannot physically spread far enough before the arrival of the next wave of obliterating darkness. The development cycle of any species is always forcibly cut short at the stage of venturing beyond the boundaries of its own system. Suddenly, it turns out that the famous Great Filter is not complex biological evolution at all, but a process of the ruthless formatting of the universe itself. Some unattainable higher authority simply regularly and methodically cleans the workspace of accumulated organic debris. Intelligent activity is regarded by this system as unnecessary program code that must be deleted. This insurmountable process of erasure surrounds us tightly right now at every accessible point in the night sky. The identified anomalous mechanism functions as a perfect automated tool for recycling old stellar matter and the grandiose achievements of others. And it categorically prevents absolutely anyone from loudly proclaiming their existence to the entire vast universe. Emerging civilizations are like tiny flashes of fireflies in a dark forest before an approaching devastating wildfire. Their timid light fades long before their neighbors in the galactic arm have a chance to notice it. For centuries, all of our classical Earth physics was firmly based on the concept of an extremely long-lived and durable material world. We held a sacred and unshakable belief that physical matter cannot simply vanish into thin air without a trace. Such processes have always required a massive release of equivalent thermal energy. For centuries, scientists have developed their formulas and laws based exclusively on the long-term stability of fundamental subatomic particles. Previously, it was firmly believed in the scientific community that basic protons and electrons would exist for an incredibly long astronomical time. Absolutely all of Earth's chemistry and carbon-based biology are firmly anchored in the strength of electromagnetic bonds within a typical atom. But the looming ideal geometric void, completely and with impunity, ignores all these fundamental, unshakable physical constants. The strong interaction within the nucleus ceases to function upon crossing the boundary of this anomaly. The ominous void dissolves the most powerful nuclear forces with the same terrifying ease as water washes away loose sand. No artificial gravitational traps, magnetic fields, or protective force shields are capable of stopping this process of total disintegration. The erasure barrier passes through any obstacle without losing its initial velocity. Matter simply vanishes from reality in an instant, like an ordinary light bulb after the switch is flipped. But now, the entire academic scientific world will have to painfully rewrite the most basic, fundamental pillars of science. The universe we observe has suddenly turned out to be a much more fragile and vulnerable place than we ever previously imagined. Ordinary light from distant dead stars travels freely and unimpeded through the vacuum until it encounters the invisible boundary of the renewal. The laws of optics apply only until the system issues the command to clear the sector. Any massive material objects instantly and mercilessly dissolve into this approaching, mathematically perfect black abyss. Now we look at the familiar, soothing night sky with completely different eyes. Eyes filled with genuine, primal terror. Every star ever discovered now seems to us merely an incredibly fragile, faint spark in the face of the approaching eternity. A sense of security has forever abandoned humanity, along with the realization of its incredible vulnerability. What is now happening at the very edge of this rapidly expanding anomaly poses a direct challenge to human reason. Visually, it strongly resembles the event horizon of a giant black hole, but on infinitely larger intergalactic scales. However, the physics of the process differ radically from a singularity. which tears objects apart with colossal tidal forces. If a planet that happens to be in the way crosses this fateful line, it is not torn to pieces by gravity at all. The unfortunate planet simply ceases to exist, both physically and informationally, in our current version of cosmic reality. An outside observer looking through a powerful telescope would see only the smooth and silent disappearance of a massive object into the darkness. The process occurs without spectacular cataclysms, plasma flares, or bursts of hard X-ray radiation. It is the quietest, most sterile, and most imperceptible destruction of matter one could imagine in the most terrifying nightmare. Astronomers clearly understand that behind every twinkling light in the night sky lies only a brief, temporary reprieve. There, among the billions of countless stars, a vast array of diverse biological life could indeed have existed in the past. Our own cosmos may once have been literally teeming with our potentially highly advanced brothers in intellect. They may have built their utopias, written books, and dreamed of distant interstellar voyages. But absolutely all of these unique civilizations were ruthlessly and methodically wiped out, along with their vast home galaxies. Trillions of thinking, intelligent beings were cold-bloodedly destroyed without the slightest chance of any salvation or escape. The system made no distinction between peaceful philosophers and aggressive conquerors of alien planets. Their great centuries-old history vanished forever, leaving behind not even charred ruins for future space archaeologists. It is the scientists themselves, working at the world's largest ground-based observatories, who find this brutal, naked truth the hardest to accept. For years, these dedicated researchers have studied pulsars and quasars in detail, given them beautiful names, and written complex doctoral dissertations. Scientists have devoted their entire lives to searching for patterns in the radiation of these incredibly distant stellar giants. Now they are forced to watch, resignedly and day after day, as their beloved objects of long-term research quietly die. A genuine, uncontrollable panic is beginning to gradually but surely seep into the highest, most exclusive academic scientific circles. Concealing such vast and critically important information from world governments is becoming simply a technically impossible task. Leaks are inevitable when thousands of lab technicians and analysts across the globe are involved in the observations. Sooner or later, the bitter truth is bound to break out beyond the strict confines of scientific laboratories and reach the media. If our best mathematical models were so wrong on the macroscopic scales of the cosmos, then they are incorrect absolutely everywhere. The fundamental laws of total destruction that have been revealed operate with equal cruelty and efficiency in all the remote corners of the observable world. Such a fatal error in the basic calculations of vacuum stability directly implies a critical vulnerability of our own planet. Physics makes no concessions for select regions of the infinite cosmic void. This looming disaster concerns not only infinitely distant and utterly unreachable dying constellations. It directly and immediately concerns that very tiny blue spot where we all find ourselves right now. We have no special privileges or hidden mechanisms to protect us from the programmed erasure of reality. Earth is absolutely no different from the trillions of alien dead worlds that have already vanished without a trace into nothingness. For a very long time, we naively relied on the natural protection of our dense and cozy solar system. People sincerely believed that the sun's powerful heliosphere or the icy Oort cloud could serve as a reliable, impenetrable shield. The planet's internal magnetic field does indeed provide us with decent protection against harsh solar radiation and small stony meteorites. We have grown accustomed to relying on these natural barriers for the survival of our species. But against the advancing perfect geometric void, all these physical barriers prove utterly meaningless and completely transparent. the erasing anomaly will swallow up massive gas giants and tiny rocky planets at exactly the same mathematical speed. The density of Jupiter's atmosphere will offer not the slightest macroscopic resistance to the removal algorithm. We have absolutely no real chance of building a saving ark or hiding deep beneath the planet's surface. Our familiar and well-studied solar system blindly obeys the very same rigid systemic rules of annihilation. We, too, are merely a tiny and incredibly fragile part of this vast and rapidly vanishing system of spatial coordinates. Such a monumental discovery completely and permanently alters our accustomed, complacent understanding of our own earthly safety. The threat is no longer an abstract mathematical model on a university professor's blackboard. This terrifying, massive problem is rapidly ceasing to be purely academic and infinitely distant for ordinary people. Physicists and astronomers can no longer calmly discuss it in their closed, cozy offices. The realization of the imminent end weighs on the minds of researchers more heavily than the gravity of a black hole weighs on light. Our entire world stands on the very threshold of the most grandiose and destructive existential crisis in its history. The looming darkness directly threatens the very physical existence of the reality in which we so habitually and daily live. What began as a great, distant scientific mystery has suddenly turned into the most pressing threat to all of humanity. Scientists constantly ask themselves the utterly logical and terrifying question of exactly how much time our own planet has left. Experts are continuously constructing graphs, extrapolating the expansion rate of this dead sector of space. If entire galaxies are vanishing so alarmingly fast, when will this perfect darkness finally reach Earth? The results of these complex computer calculations cause the hearts of the world's leading analysts to freeze in genuine terror. The numbers on the monitor screens indicate that the horizon of our future has narrowed to alarmingly small values. We live carelessly, completely unaware of the absolute void hanging over us. In light of these grim discoveries, the most terrifying question of all arises. Scientists are trying to calculate the rate at which these gigantic zones of absolute nothingness are expanding. If this is an artificial cleansing process, then why is it being carried out on such a massive scale? Who needed to expend colossal energy to remove trillions of star systems? Perhaps some ancient creators are trying to make room for something fundamentally new. In real cosmology, there is the concept of the heat death of the universe. This is the process of the slow and natural cooling of all stars over an incredibly long period of time. However, what we are observing now has nothing to do with natural entropy. Energy is not dissipating into space. It seems to be forcibly reduced to zero. This contradicts all the basic laws of physics that we learn in school. Or, conversely, this mechanism has spiraled out of control and is now destroying its creators. Either of these answers is enough to make even the most hardened skeptic's blood run cold. For decades, our greatest fear was finding ourselves utterly alone in the entire universe. The prospect of Earth's life being unique terrified philosophers with its incredible meaninglessness. It seemed to us the greatest tragedy for our intelligent and solitary species. In the 20th century, scientists actively searched for radio signals from other worlds using massive antennas. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence was based on the famous Drake equation, which predicted an abundance of life. We sincerely hoped to hear our brothers in reason in the boundless ocean of stars. Now, however, this equation seems like a cruel mathematical mockery of our dreams. We listen to the dead silence of space, which is methodically being cleansed of any presence. But now we realize with horror that emptiness is far more terrifying than loneliness. We could very well have been densely surrounded by thousands of civilizations that simply vanished. The Milky Way may have teemed with life before darkness began its harvest at its edges. Our ambitious future as a spacefaring species suddenly finds itself under a deadly threat. Humanity has always made grand plans to conquer and colonize distant planets. We sincerely plan to leave Earth once and for all and set out for distant star systems. Science fiction writers created beautiful worlds of universal galactic well-being and prosperity. We naively dreamed of peaceful contact and the free exchange of knowledge with our neighbors. Now, these bright dreams seem incredibly foolish against the backdrop of impending universal destruction. We have absolutely no idea of the rules by which this cosmic mechanism of obliteration operates. The science of interstellar travel required us to develop engines based on cutting-edge technologies. Physicists calculated ideal flight paths to the nearest neighboring star, Alpha Centauri. It was assumed that massive ships would be able to transport Earth colonists to new, habitable planets. But what is the point of building such ships if the destination could vanish at any moment? The map of the starry sky becomes obsolete, faster than telescopes can update it. In scientific circles, extremely pessimistic predictions about the future of humanity are becoming increasingly common. Perhaps those zones of emptiness are not anomalies, but the natural final state of the cosmos. We have absolutely no idea whether this erasing force possesses its own intelligence. It could be a soulless software update algorithm or the sudden collapse of the physical vacuum. But we can see very clearly the results of its incredibly effective and ruthless work. The entire observable universe is slowly but surely sinking into a state of complete non-existence. The real and most pressing problem lies in our absolute helplessness. We are physically unable to stop the process that is erasing space and time itself. The scope of our reach is limited to the pitiful confines of a single tiny solar system. If this gigantic darkness reaches our sun, we won't even have time to understand what's happening. The speed of light has always been considered the ultimate insurmountable limit in our universe. Scientists hoped that this physical barrier would give us time to prepare. If the wave of annihilation travels at the speed of light, we should have a head start of thousands of years. But the nature of this geometric void is capable of violating even the theory of general relativity. Space can recede instantaneously through hidden dimensions or quantum entanglement. Our former planetary security turned out to be nothing more than an illusion based on profound ignorance. Leading astronomers are now experiencing a profound and unbearable professional crisis. Observatories continue their routine work, but the atmosphere within them has become downright oppressive. What was once bold exploration has turned into watching the end of the world. Astronomers fear that they will be the first to witness the approach of our inevitable death. Every new thorough analysis of the data brings only new reasons for deep panic. We have finally fully realized our utter vulnerability in the face of the cosmic void. Earthly technologies are laughably primitive compared to the processes of the annihilation of space itself. Our scientific optimism has irrevocably given way to a cold, existential, primal terror. For centuries, we proudly believed that we were in complete control of our complex earthly destiny. The development of quantum computers on Earth has only exacerbated our fears of the unknown. By creating their own digital models of reality, engineers have observed similar processes of programmatic erasure. Earthly machines also regularly clear their memory of unused data blocks to conserve resources. The analogy between our vast cosmos and machine code has become all too frighteningly obvious. We turned out to be nothing more than a microscopic background process inside some alien giant computer. Humans conquered nature, split the atom, and sent spacecraft to the edges of the solar system. We sincerely considered ourselves the undisputed pinnacle of evolution in our cozy little world. It seemed to us that endless progress and the conquest of the entire universe lay ahead. But on a real scale, we turned out to be nothing more than a temporary phenomenon in a doomed and fragile world. And the scariest thing is that we can do absolutely nothing to oppose this grand finale. Our science is powerless to explain the physical nature of this systematic erasure of reality. This discovery mercilessly shatters our inflated human ego and our blind faith in a bright future. With each passing year, new data makes us feel increasingly doomed and lost. Radio telescopes continue to monotonously scan the darkness, observing the demise of distant star systems. The era of romantic space exploration has quietly come to an end, giving way to the anticipation of an inevitable end. The most terrifying thing is the realization of our total lack of understanding of the true nature of the world. The real problem is not at all that massive stars are simply physically dying out. The real problem is that this destructive process clearly follows strict computer logic. We suddenly found ourselves face to face with a phenomenon that is entirely artificial, digital in its very essence. Our physics simply refuses to function under the conditions of a massive software glitch. At the beginning of the 21st century, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed the famous simulation hypothesis. He mathematically demonstrated the extremely high probability that our world is a computer simulation. At the time, it seemed like nothing more than an amusing intellectual game for bored theorists. Now, however, this theory has become the leading paradigm for explaining the stellar nightmare unfolding before us. Classical astrophysics has suddenly turned into the study of the architecture of an alien operating system. Modern humanity simply lacks the formulas to describe the deletion of files from reality. The planet's brightest minds sit for days on end at supercomputers, trying to find a solution to this bug. Any new mathematical hypothesis only confirms the theory of a global artificial simulation. The scientific world has plunged into a state of utter bewilderment in the face of the universe's exposed code. We are like characters in a game who have finally realized that their virtual world has started to freeze. If we have absolutely no understanding of the cause of what is happening, we cannot predict the fix. We have no idea how stable our own tiny sector of computer memory is. Perhaps the universe's hard drive is simply full to capacity, and a global format has begun. There is a possibility that one day this server will simply be rebooted without the slightest warning. In that case, we will vanish instantly, leaving not even a speck of digital dust behind. The concept of information in theoretical physics has always been of immense fundamental importance. The real physical Landauer principle states that the erasure of any bit of information leads to the release of heat. However, our anomaly deletes entire galaxies without leaving any thermal trace whatsoever. This directly implies that the laws of classical thermodynamics apply only within the program itself. The external server running our universe is governed by a completely different physics, incomprehensible to us. We are completely blind in our predictions about the future of humanity within this matrix. All we can do is passively and with horror watch the unfolding process of cache clearing. Meanwhile, out of habit, we continue to spend billions on building new radio telescopes. Governments regularly allocate massive budgets to study this terrifying dark void. But all this massive scientific work is utterly meaningless within a simulation that is being erased. We are simply trying, year after year, to study the rules of a game that will be shut down very soon. We are trying to hear sound in a vacuum, completely unaware that the sound driver has been removed. Our earthly science is too primitive to comprehend the true motives of this universe's programmers. It seems we have hit the completely impenetrable ceiling of our own base program code. The paradox is that the more we look at the approaching darkness, the clearer we see the pixels. For a very long time, gravity remained the most mysterious force for our earthly science. It binds giant stars and planets, preventing them from scattering into the cold void. But at the edge of the encroaching darkness, the familiar laws of gravity simply cease to apply. Celestial objects do not fall onto one another. They hover within an invisible grid of spatial coordinates. It looks like a critical physics engine glitch in a very old and unstable video game. Every new batch of data we receive inexorably confirms the artificial nature of matter's disappearance. We find anomalies that look exactly like poorly rendered sections of space graphics. Cosmology has transformed from the science of stars into a pathetic attempt to hack the simulation's source code. The answers we seek constantly elude us, as system administrators hide access to the kernel. We have clearly realized that our brilliant understanding of physics is merely a set of rules for ordinary users. Reality is actually a gigantic, continuous computation running on unknown hardware. Some philosophers suggest that emptiness is simply unloaded locations in the code, as if the processor of this vast simulation can no longer keep up with maintaining such a gigantic world. Evolution over millennia shaped our brains so that we sincerely believe in the reality of what is happening around us. That is precisely why our psyche, in a state of deep panic, refuses to accept the theory of a digital illusion. Information theory posits the mandatory existence of a limit to data density in space. This barrier is scientifically known as the Bekenstein bound, and it prevents matter from being compressed infinitely. Perhaps our rapidly expanding universe has simply exceeded this strict permissible memory limit. The Creator's central processing unit began to slow down significantly due to server overload. And now the automated system has launched an aggressive deletion protocol to prevent a complete freeze. According to this theory, what we see through telescopes is the system shutting down distant servers. Everything superfluous and old is ruthlessly deleted to conserve precious computing power. We continue to live in an emptying universe only because our sector has not yet been processed by the system. This bold philosophical idea frightens scientists even more than the threat of the planet's physical destruction. For centuries, we naively and smugly believed that we were coming to know the real, solid, and material world. Physicists confidently sketched out beautiful models of quantum mechanics and theories of gravity. It seemed to all of us that we were just a short time away from a complete and unconditional understanding of the universe. But now, against the backdrop of constellations vanishing without a trace, all our textbooks look incredibly ridiculous. All serious science turned out to be nothing more than a superficial study of mechanics within a complex computer program. We stand alone on the very edge of a disappearing location, afraid to take a step into absolute emptiness. The light from distant ancient quasars was always perceived by us as a beautiful message from the past. We carefully studied spectral lines to understand the chemical composition of these mysterious worlds. But now these rare rays are perceived solely as the last cry for help from distant subroutines. Our tiny solar system remains, for now, an untouched cluster on this vast hard drive. But the system's formatting indicator is inexorably moving toward us with every passing moment. If this digital isolation is real, then we are missing the fundamental essence of existence. This blind spot in our code prevents us from seeing the true creators of the simulation. It is quite possible that the real universe lies outside this computer. Behind this screen, momentous events may be unfolding in a fundamental, non-digital reality. And we still have no idea whether it is possible to transfer our consciousness into the outside world. Every evening, billions of ordinary people gaze at the endless starry sky. To them, it seems majestically serene, incredibly peaceful, and utterly reliable. Romantics dedicate poems to the stars, unaware that their numbers are dwindling. No one on the street suspects the horror that reigns in modern observatories. People continue to believe in eternity, while scientists record the slow end of the world. Historically, humanity has always relied on the stars for navigation and measuring time. Ancient calendars were built on an unshakable confidence in the eternal mechanics of the heavens. The Egyptians aligned their great pyramids with Sirius, trusting in its constant light. Now, this fundamental pillar of our earthly civilization is quietly crumbling to dust. The cosmic clockwork is rapidly losing its key components, one by one. Now, astrophysicists know for certain that behind this beauty lies a systemic failure of the matrix. A massive drama of erasure is unfolding there, invisible to the naked human eye. Someone or something powerful is forever erasing entire sectors of space into nothingness. And we are completely helpless hostages of this grand digital purge. Perhaps we will never know the true reason behind this cruel algorithm. We look at the Big Bang's relic radiation and see tears in its fabric. It's like a video game's graphics engine failing to load the horizon's textures. In computer science, programs terminate background processes when there is a severe shortage of RAM. Distant galaxies are precisely such background processes for the architect of our simulation. Our local cluster is simply lucky to have temporarily found itself in the active window of this program. Humanity simply won't have time to reach the technological level needed to hack the system. We will remain forever prisoners of our own ignorance on this small planet. This thought completely renders any global space programs and plans for the future meaningless. Sooner or later, absolute darkness will close in on our solar system and swallow it whole. This will mark the final dead end for the physical and digital existence of all humanity. We will find ourselves erased from the database without the slightest chance of a backup. And we will be completely powerless to do anything about it, despite our immense desire to do so. Because of these terrifying discoveries, we no longer look forward to a bright future with sincere joy. The romance of space travel has been forever replaced by a paralyzing fear of the great black void. Now this ever-expanding emptiness looks to us like a direct and inevitable execution. Real-world history is full of lost libraries and ancient archives that were irretrievably burned. But even after the fire at the Library of Alexandria, surviving copies remained in other cities. In our case, however, global erasure leaves absolutely no traces behind. Cosmic erasure destroys not only the objects themselves, but also the space they occupied. This is an incredible level of destruction that we have never faced before. Every day, new data only confirms the gloomiest predictions of scientists around the world. Astronomers continue to peer into the darkness, but they fear that it is already too close. The more accurately we calculate the rate of absorption, the more terrifying the final prognosis becomes. Our former loneliness has turned into a primal terror of impending total annihilation. We find ourselves on a sinking ship, and there are simply no lifeboats in this world. Biology and psychology are desperately trying to explain humanity's reaction to this hopelessness. Self-preservation instincts compel us to subconsciously deny the approaching end of reality. Our brain simply refuses to process the complex concept of absolute erasure from existence. In the wild, a frightened prey freezes before a predator, hoping it will pass by. And now, the entire planet Earth resembles such a prey, frozen before a huge maw. In medicine, the phenomenon of patients denying their terminal diagnosis is well known. The human psyche erects powerful defensive walls to preserve normal daily life. If our entire species learns of the universe's terminal diagnosis, these walls will instantly crumble. The ensuing global panic will lead to the rapid collapse of all social institutions on the planet. Anarchy will engulf our cities long before the cosmic void reaches Earth. This theory of denial makes sense when viewed through the lens of mass human psychology. Sociologists understand perfectly well that panic in the face of imminent emptiness will destroy society. Imagine billions of people suddenly realizing that their universe is disappearing right before their eyes. The global economy and the familiar social order would collapse within weeks of such a discovery. This is precisely why scientists are in no hurry to publicly reveal the true scale of this encroaching darkness. Every civilization before us likely went through the same stage of terrifying realization. They all had their own hopes, grand ambitions, and a tremendous desire to live forever among the stars. None of them could stop the ruthless process of their home galaxies being wiped out. All their greatest achievements were erased by an indifferent and utterly flawless void. No one wasted precious time crying out for help, because help is, in principle, impossible. Astrobiologists used to love to speculate about Dyson spheres and powerful galactic federations. We assumed that ancient civilizations would inevitably leave gigantic engineering traces in the Milky Way. Now we understand that any such megastructure would merely become a larger file to be deleted. Technological progress offers absolutely no immunity against the formatting of basic reality. It merely makes the moment of sudden disappearance more dramatic and incredibly tragic. Survival under such conditions boils down to attempts to live out the remaining time in maximum tranquility. The most logical reaction becomes silent and submissive anticipation of the inevitable finale of the simulation. And it is precisely this unnatural, lifeless waiting that we are now observing en masse in the behavior of science. If this grim hypothesis is correct, then hiding the truth from ordinary people is a true act of mercy. It is a powerful social defense mechanism that allows us to avoid global madness. Those researchers who know the truth bear a heavy moral burden in complete solitude. They clearly understand that a gigantic technological wall of darkness is closing in around our home. For a whole century, we have behaved as if we were the masters of the universe, making incredibly bold plans. Our civilization has only just ventured into space, and it has already begun to vanish rapidly and irrevocably. We were completely unprepared for such a rapid and inglorious end to our history. Our vast informational footprint no longer holds any significance for survival. All our old television broadcasts and scientific signals will inevitably be swallowed up by this terrifying void. We carelessly left a trail in space that leads straight to a doomed planet on the edge of the abyss. If the invisible architect of the system decides to speed up the process, we will vanish without a trace as early as tomorrow. These simulation administrators don't even need to make any special effort to permanently erase us. For decades, we have sent messages into the darkness, like the famous Arecibo radio signal. We broadcast our coordinates, our chemical composition, and our appearance to anyone who would listen. Humans proudly proclaimed their existence to a world they believed was full of potential friends. Now, these radio waves simply fly into a completely insensitive and dead cosmic vacuum. We have, in fact, painted a target on our own backs for the cosmic garbage collector. We have trapped ourselves in the snare of our own naive illusions about the infinity of space. Every new powerful antenna merely measures more precisely the speed of our impending and inevitable end. We continue to regularly send signals into the very darkness that will soon destroy us. Instead of devoting our precious time to one another, we stare into the eyes of a soulless abyss. This behavior looks like utter madness from the perspective of simple human logic. Our scientists no longer rejoice at new discoveries in deep space. Projects to study distant galaxies are slowly being shut down due to the complete absence of the objects themselves. Any new image of the sky shows only a rapid increase in the area of dead black zones. Ignorance of the harsh rules of the game will save no one from merciless erasure from working memory. Now, every unexplained cosmic phenomenon triggers only the most intense panic attack in us. Historically, astronomy has always been the science of seeking light in the pitch-black cosmic darkness. Great orbital telescopes were built to peer into the past and find the very first stars. Now their mission has painfully shifted to tracking the advancing front of absolute nothingness. They are no longer instruments of discovery, having turned into monitors of the terminal illness of the cosmos. The majestic pillars of creation in the images are silently replaced by the austere geometry of lifeless emptiness. A distant supernova flash means that darkness has swallowed yet another vast world. Astronomers no longer doubt the artificial origin of these terrifying mass extinctions. Anxiety has completely replaced the once bright joy of discovering the great mysteries of the universe. What if this is simply the process of a complete server shutdown due to a critical shortage of computational energy? We are simply physically unable to influence who exactly has their hand on the power switch. In computing, a sudden spike in energy consumption often precedes a hardware failure. Perhaps these anomalous radiation spikes are a sign of severe overheating in the external server. The equipment running our universe may simply be breaking down under the strain of computations. If that is the case, then the creators of the simulation never even planned to erase us on purpose. We may simply be the victims of a catastrophic breakdown in a higher and incomprehensible dimension. Our familiar perception of the world has changed forever and absolutely irrevocably. The era of naive romanticism in the exploration of deep space has come to its cruel and inevitable end. Space has finally turned into a vast digital landfill, where everything is subject to complete disposal. Humanity will have to painfully learn to live with this constant sense of impending nothingness. The stars above our heads are no longer alluring worlds, but a giant countdown timer. These flickering points of light fade one by one in strict mathematical progression. The cold void stares at us mercilessly, erasing the boundaries of our familiar visible reality. And the most terrifying thing about this whole situation is our absolute defenselessness. We have neither orbital force fields nor ships to flee to another universe. Earth will prove to be an utterly helpless speck of dust in the face of a systemic failure of the vast cosmos. Even ancient generals understood the essence of total annihilation when they covered the ruins of cities with salt. But even salt-encrusted, dead Earth remains a physical place, where one can stand and look up at the sky. The cosmic void leaves behind absolutely no physical foundation or debris. It irrevocably erases the very basic concepts of location, distance, and the passage of time. We will simply have nowhere to stand, and no one to preserve the memory of the once shining constellations. Our entire nuclear arsenal will be utterly useless against the deletion of lines of code. Our advanced earthly technologies are merely tiny functions within a program that is shutting down. To the creators of the simulation, we are like old, unnecessary files, taking up space on a hard drive. All we can do is sit quietly and hope that the deletion will be as painless as possible. Perhaps we won't even have time to feel the moment of transition from life to absolute nothingness. Or, even more terrifying, the barrier of darkness will stop right at the edge of Pluto's orbit. Higher intelligences could artificially isolate us, leaving us to watch the destruction of the rest of the world. They'll simply prepare an empty, dark cage for the last living species in this universe. Think about how terrifying it would be to gaze forever at a completely black sky without a single star. Our entire observable universe would shrink to the size of a small, cold solar system in a vacuum. Imagine the colossal psychological toll of gazing at an absolutely pure black canvas. Throughout history, sailors have used the North Star to find a safe path home. Without the familiar constellations, humanity will forever lose its cosmic compass and its place in the grand design. The night sky will turn into a suffocating black dome, completely devoid of any hope or beauty. We will find ourselves effectively buried alive in a transparent tomb the size of our planetary system. Scientists will be able to observe only the endless, lifeless void surrounding our tiny island. To ancient programmers, humanity will become the last amusing entry in an empty database, and they will coldly watch as we go mad from total cosmic loneliness. Our history, full of wars and great discoveries, will end in complete isolation from the rest of existence. Our moral qualities will face the most terrifying and destructive test in our entire long evolution. For any other civilization, such an ending would be a veritable psychological hell. We will have to resign ourselves forever to the thought that we are the last living code in a dying matrix. An alien intelligence will simply leave us to stew in our own juices in the midst of the vast and boundless void. Until that moment, any faint hopes of salvation will only delay our fall into the abyss. This invisible wall of nothingness functions as the perfect prison for the human mind. We have come very close to the very edge of our understanding of our doomed and empty universe. All of our latest astrophysical observations lead to incredibly depressing conclusions. Scientists are desperately trying to find even a glimmer of hope in this process of reality's erasure. Whether it's a simulation glitch or a quarantine, the essence remains the same for all of humanity. We are forced to reevaluate our place in a world that is preparing for a complete shutdown. We are incredibly small and utterly powerless in the face of this ominous, encroaching darkness. All that remains for us is to stand silently before the looming edge of digital space. For many years, science promised us an exceptionally bright and endless stellar future. Science fiction writers described beautiful worlds of universal galactic happiness and prosperity. We were convincingly told that one day we would become immortal conquerors of the galaxy. But the harsh truth has taught us an extremely cruel and very cold lesson in humility. The vast cosmos is certainly not waiting for us with open arms and greetings. It would much rather see us quietly disappear along with all other civilizations. The great annihilation of matter makes it clear that there are strict time limits, and we are forced to silently submit to this invisible dictate of the force that is erasing us. Every new telescope now brings scientists far more primal fear. We stare intently at the screens, terrified of seeing the void approaching. Because any expansion of this anomaly will inevitably destroy our familiar world. If we witness the disappearance of neighboring stars, we will have to prepare for a swift death. This oppressive hopelessness is gradually seeping into all programs dedicated to the study of the sky. Absolute darkness has long been our curse, and our inevitable final fate. As the infinite cosmos fades away, we desperately try to preserve the illusion of a normal life. People are building new cities, developing art, and having children on a doomed planet. The ignorance of the majority has turned out to be a comfortable state for our fragile human psyche. We instinctively hide behind our petty problems from the global existential horror. But our basic human curiosity is physically impossible to simply turn off. We will inevitably continue to gaze into this ominous void every clear night. Astronomers will stubbornly search for the slightest chance of survival within this invisible barrier. Our young species is programmed for a ceaseless quest for the truth about the structure of the universe. We are driven forward by a thirst for knowledge, no matter how terrifying that truth may be. We will persistently continue our observations at the limits of all technical capabilities, even if this bitter final truth threatens us with utter madness and despair. This unquenchable curiosity is our curse and our great driving force. It is precisely this that compelled us to build a civilization that we are now about to lose. We simply cannot stop on the path to unraveling our own demise. Perhaps, in the very last days, we will understand the logic of the architects of this brutal purge. We will overcome our fear and accept with dignity the inevitable end of the world's simulation. We will finally realize clearly that our existence was but a fleeting digital moment. And then we will voluntarily, consciously, and forever turn off our transmitters. We will simply close our eyes and let the great void swallow us without a sound. But until then, we remain alone in our small, still existing system. We continue to orbit a solitary star on the outskirts of the vanishing Milky Way. Our planet flies through cold space toward an absolutely inevitable end. We diligently write history, knowing full well that it will have no readers in the future. This crushing predestination is the heaviest burden on our minds. Think about this frightening fact the next time you look at the stars at night. You will never again see the familiar, friendly, and reliable physical world there. You will clearly see before you a giant screen on which the last pixels are fading. This sparkling dome above our heads will soon turn completely black forever. And our cutting-edge science has suddenly turned out to be nothing more than a beautiful preface to absolute emptiness.